Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dale Brando with Stewart Advisors. Welcome to our ongoing webinar series on topics of interest to our clients. Before we go too far, I'm going to jump ahead and just let you know that next month we're going to be looking at tax planning to help you get ready for year end. We'll have a guest speaker with us as well. And believe it or not, year end is coming up really fast. Today, however, we're going to be discussing retirement planning and specifically the question, how much is enough? To help present, I'm joined by my colleague, Tim Obendorf. Tim's a veteran of many conversations on the subject of retirement planning, and he's uniquely positioned to talk us through the various issues. So really briefly, here's what we hope to cover in the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to try and stay focused on the question that brought us here and spend a lot of our time looking at how you can identify and calculate what you need to retire successfully. After you've done that, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of a written plan. And finally, we're going to discuss some ways that you can improve your chances of success or get your plan back on track if it's broken. We're going to try and leave a few minutes at the end to answer any questions, so feel free to submit them anytime using the Q&A buttons on your console. To get us started, I want to just say a couple words about Stewart Advisors and how we approach retirement planning. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are a financial planning and investment firm. Our mission is to help individuals and families and business owners realize their goals and make good financial decisions. We provide a range of services, as you can see from the screen, and we want to help our clients develop a really consistent, holistic financial plan. Our approach is to get to know people deeply and understand their goals and their concerns. We then try to work closely with them over the long term to create a financial plan and make intelligent decisions as issues come up. They're also going to need to modify that plan as your goals change and real life gets in the way. We work on a fee-only basis, and we think that lets us serve as unbiased consultants so we can deliver the best possible advice. So as we're doing this and working with clients over the long haul, we get a lot of different questions about retirement and retirement planning. A lot of these boil down to the same root issue, which is, am I going to run out of money? Or sometimes it gets spun a little bit differently as, how much do I need in order to retire? That's a fairly straightforward question, but of course the answer varies widely from individual to individual, depending on a lot of different factors. And so what Tim's gonna help us do today is look at some key questions that you should be asking and give you a methodology for answering that question for yourself or for your family. And so having said that, let me turn control over to Tim.
Thanks, Dale. I'm guessing most of you joined the webinar because you're trying to answer the question, how much is enough? So you're in luck today. You'll want to stick around to the very end when I give each of you the exact dollar amount that you'll need to retire. Of course, I'm just kidding. I wish retirement planning was that easy. One of the challenges with retirement is that everyone's situation is unique. Your personal goals, current lifestyle, and health condition are just a few of the variables that make your retirement needs unique. And while there are a lot of rules of thumb that can point you generally in the right direction, doing a comprehensive retirement plan can give you much more confidence that you're financially ready to retire when the time comes. Take a look at the statistics on the right. 78% of Americans are extremely or somewhat concerned about affording retirement, and yet less than half have done much planning to address their concern. And as a result, 1 in 5 Americans have no retirement savings at all. While it takes a little bit of work to build a plan, doing so will put you way ahead of the majority of your peers. The first step in thinking about retirement is to create a vision for what you would like to do in retirement. We generally define retirement as not having to work for a living. So what are you going to do with the extra 40 or 50 hours a week? Where you live will have a big impact on your activities. Do you want to live near family, move to the mountains, or be close to a beach? Are there activities you'd like to do? Maybe you've always wanted to try learning a new language, and that could sure help with all the travel you'd like to do. Has it been too long since you've seen friends and family? Maybe you want to visit or even move closer to friends and family, or maybe there's a sport you'd like to try or an instrument you'd like to play. Maybe you'd like to map out your family tree for reference for future generations. And if you're married, I recommend you spend some time with your spouse brainstorming your retirement vision together. Maybe carve out a Friday night, get a bottle of wine. Spending time doing that can really be a fun experience of dreaming together of what retirement might look like for you. Once your retirement vision begins to come into focus, it's time to drill into the details about your retirement. Where you retire will impact more than whether you see mountains or beach from your front porch. If you move, you may need to rebuild your social network as well as your service provider network. Your location may have tax implications, and there are cost considerations that impact the freedom to do other activities. I mean, it's pretty obvious New York City and Hawaii are a lot more expensive than Florida or Nevada. What type of housing makes sense for you? Do you want to take care of a single family home or have a condo that you can leave for several weeks at a time when you're traveling? When will you retire? When will your spouse retire? These are separate decisions from when you will claim Social Security. Will you want to work in retirement? Just because you retire from your current career doesn't mean you may not want to work. There are a lot of social and financial advantages to working in retirement. Your retirement vision may have included certain activities you'd like to pursue, so now's the time to prioritize those activities and estimate the costs and resources they require. If your plan is to sail around the world, you might need to start taking sailing lessons now, and you might need to sock a little extra away to purchase that sailboat you always wanted. Do you want to leave a financial legacy to your family or fund charitable interests? Are there loved ones you need to take care of? Maybe you have special needs kids or adult or aging parents that you need to take care of, and that needs to be factored into your retirement plan. Maybe you have a business that you need to transition, and that can be a whole planning engagement on its own. So we won't spend a lot of time on that, but it's something you need to consider as part of your overall retirement plan. How will you maintain your health? And this includes physical, spiritual, and emotional health. And are you able to fund a long and healthy retirement? Or what about if medical expenses are high if you're not healthy? And an important question is, have you considered how Uncle Sam can help you fund your retirement through various tax strategies? Who will you go to for advice? As we age past 50, our cognition declines. At the same time, medical and financial decisions are getting more and more complex. Do you have people in your life you trust to help make complicated decisions? And have you documented those trusted advisors in your medical or property powers of attorney? Finally, what if you live longer than expected? Now, that may be good news, but it creates challenges from a planning standpoint in trying to figure out how you fund a longer than expected lifespan. Answers to all those detailed questions will determine your financial needs in retirement. In fact, those details are so important, we've prepared a handout with 48 questions organized into 10 categories that we'll send each of you after this webinar. The next step in the planning process is to assess all of your resources and obligations. We work with our clients to get a picture of their assets and their liabilities, and we have a system to update those values as they change. This inventory should include retirement assets, non-retirement investments, business interests, real estate, cash value of life insurance, mortgages, credit card balances, and other loans, to name the most common items. The net of what you own and what you owe is your net worth. And this is the baseline, the starting point that you will use to fund your retirement. But not only should you inventory your current assets and liabilities, it's important to project out into the future to determine future sources of income and future expenses. Future income could include an annuity or a pension, an inheritance, Social Security, part-time or full-time work, or maybe proceeds from the sale of assets like sale of a business or real estate. To estimate future expenses, start with your base living expenses, which according to a recent study by David Blanchett from Morningstar, could range anywhere from 54% to 87% of pre-retirement income. On top of that, future expenses could include your kids' college or wedding expenses, buying a second home, exotic travel, medical expenses, or moving expenses. In the same study I mentioned above, David Blanchett found that expenses in retirement do not grow at the rate of inflation. In fact, what he found is that the expenses tend to go down in the early years and then increase faster than inflation in later years. What's interesting is that this pattern was different for different income groups. The higher the income level, the more that your retirement expenses tended to go down in the early years. Knowing your current resources and obligations as well as your future income and expenses is the needed input to build a cash flow projection. And the cash flow projection will require a number of assumptions, such as the inflation rate or the investment returns. And while we know many of the assumptions won't turn out as expected, the cash flow projection will give you a baseline to evaluate some of the choices you'll make in retirement. So as we mentioned, you'll want to inventory your assets and liabilities and also project cash flow. And this slide shows you examples of a net worth statement on the right-hand side and a cash flow projection on the left that we help clients prepare. The net worth statement is a snapshot in time, but the cash flow projection may go out 30 to 50 years into the future. One thing interesting about the net worth statement is not only do we identify assets and liabilities, but we also look at the titling of those assets, whether it's owned by the husband or the wife. And this gets to be important when we begin to do estate planning. Now, we know that any time that we are projecting out into the future, especially for time periods as long as 50 years, things are going to turn out differently than expected. Inflation might be higher or lower, investment returns will vary every year, and your life expectancy may be shorter or longer than average. To take these variables into account, we use statistical tools to run 1,000 or more scenarios where the inflation rate, investment returns, and life expectancy are different in every scenario. The graph on the right gives you a picture of how an investment portfolio might grow under various scenarios. So in this case, the investor started with around $1 million, and with different investment returns, in different scenarios, the investor ends up with maybe as little as $2 million or as much as $11 million in 20 years. We don't know exactly which path your future will take, but the value in running these 1,000 scenarios is that we can then estimate the chances of a retiree running out of money. And our goal is to get clients to a point where their money lasts through the retirement in 90% or more of the scenarios. Before we move on with the planning process, I'd like to have a little side conversation about Social Security. Social Security is one of the major sources of income in retirement, and yet most of us don't have a good understanding of how to maximize our benefit. Not only do you get your direct Social Security benefit if you've worked 40 quarters, but if you were married for 10 or more years, you may also be eligible for a spousal benefit, even if you're currently divorced or widowed. Your benefit is based on your earnings history and the age that you claim your benefit. If you'd like to get a more accurate estimate of your Social Security benefit, you can go on their website and set up an account where you can see your projected benefit at various claiming ages. Be aware that no matter when you begin your benefit, up to 85% of your Social Security benefit may be taxed if you exceed certain income thresholds. And the timing of your direct benefit, of claiming your direct benefit and your spousal benefit, are two separate decisions. You can imagine there are multiple options for a husband and wife to claim their benefits. If you claim your benefit before full retirement, not only will the benefit be reduced from your projected full retirement age benefit, but your benefit could be reduced if you have other income. When choosing a strategy for claiming Social Security, you need to ask, what's your ultimate goal here? Is it to get as much money as soon as you can? Or alternatively, is it to provide financial security into old age? Waiting until age 70 can increase your benefit by 30% or more from your full retirement age benefit. And if you planned appropriately, your retirement lifestyle really probably won't change that much, whether you take Social Security at age 66 or age 70. However, if you live longer than expected, that extra 30% benefit really could have a significant impact on your quality of life and your financial security in later years. Finally, we're often asked whether you can count on your Social Security benefit. According to a study, it's a planning and progress study that Northwestern Mutual does. Their 2018 study showed that 3/4 of Americans say it's not at all likely, or maybe only somewhat likely, that Social Security will be available when they retire. The most recent trustee report on Social Security estimates that the Old Age Survivor Income Trust Fund will be depleted in 2034. So that's the fund that's dedicated to paying the benefits that we generally, typically think of as Social Security. At that point, when the fund runs out, the income received from payroll taxes covering old age survivor income will cover 77% of the scheduled benefits, assuming that there are no changes to the program. We think there are 3 outcomes possible when that happens. The first is that some changes are made to the program to extend the solvency beyond 2034. And that could include anything from reducing benefits to delaying the full retirement age to increasing payroll taxes. The second option is that no changes are made, but Congress authorizes payment of benefits above 77%, and they fund that out of other government funds. The third option is that no changes are made, and the trust fund runs out, but at that point, the benefit would be reduced to 77% of scheduled benefits. It wouldn't be eliminated completely, it would just be reduced. While that's possible, we believe that this last option of reducing benefits to 77% would be politically untenable, and Congress will be forced to fund benefits under options 1 or 2. So therefore, at this point, when we do plans, we're not discounting the Social Security benefits in long-term cash flow projections. There's a lot more detail that we could cover regarding Social Security, but we don't have time for that today. In fact, what we'd like to do, because this is such an important topic and complex enough for its own webinar, we'd like to do a future webinar focused solely on Social Security. So stay tuned for that. Now back to the retirement planning process. This may seem like a lot of work, but planning allows you to do a dry run long before retirement to see how retirement might work for you. It organizes your thoughts about retirement and provides a baseline to evaluate future decisions. Reviewing and revising the plan over time will help keep you on track. And you'll also feel confident knowing how you're going to take distributions from your investment portfolio to replace your paycheck. Finally, your plan will help keep you from missing key dates. And we've identified some of the most important dates in the graph at the bottom of this page, starting from age 59 and a half, which is the first time when you can take, it's the earliest date for taking penalty-free withdrawals from qualified plans, all the way to age 70 and a half, which is the date that you have to start taking funds out of qualified plans. And it's an opportunity for the government to begin taxing you on those distributions. So as I mentioned, doing a plan is like doing a dry run on retirement. And if you find that dry run turns out that it doesn't work, you still have some time to make different decisions to improve your success. So let's take a look at some of the key levers that can improve your retirement success. These first two, save more or reduce debt, are kind of two sides of the same coin. So both of them require that either you reduce your expenses or you increase your income to accomplish. And it's really a change in priorities. It's not easy to do, but it can be done prior to retirement. The third is to find additional income in retirement. And this could involve a part-time job, could involve turning a hobby into a business, or maybe creating an income-producing asset like rental property. Fourth, you could adjust your retirement lifestyle and reduce your living expenses in retirement. And while most people find it difficult to go backwards in retirement, you may be willing to optionally reduce your expenses. So what do I mean by that? Let's take an example. Let's say your investments perform poorly for a couple of years. Your willingness to reduce some discretionary expenses like travel could significantly increase your financial success even after your investments have returned poorly for a couple of years. Fifth, you may take a look at changing your investments. So it's not always the most risky, highest returning portfolio, or alternatively, the most conservative, lowest returning portfolio that's the most successful in funding your retirement. Modeling the impact of potential portfolio changes may require some sophisticated planning software, and that's where we can come into play and help our clients, and other advisors can take different portfolio examples and see how they play out in different scenarios and find, what makes the most sense for you. Finally, you could retire later, and this could have the biggest leverage in improving your retirement success. There was a recent study called The Power of Working Longer. It's published by Stanford University and the National Bureau of Economic Research, and it showed that working just 3 to 6 months longer before retiring has the same impact on your retirement standard of living as saving an additional 1% of your earnings for 30 years. So it increases the amount that you save, it reduces the number of years that you're drawing on your retirement portfolio, and it may also increase your Social Security benefit because often your earnings in your later years are some of your highest earning years, and it can bump up your Social Security benefit. Finally, we'd like to share a few helpful resources that you can access on your own. First, the Financial Planning Association has a public section on their website where you can find a number of white papers that are organized by topic. And they have a whole list that ranges everything from healthcare issues to planning issues to investment issues. And I'd recommend taking a look at some of those white papers. Second, if you haven't done so already, go to the Social Security website, and that's where you can access your estimated retirement benefit. And proactively setting up your account is also a good security procedure, as it reduces the chance that somebody can steal your identity. The third website we've listed here is the Living to 100 website, where there's an interesting questionnaire to give you a sense of your longevity. And when you complete the questionnaire, you'll actually get a to-do list of things that you could do to improve your health and your longevity in retirement. Fourth, the IRS has lots of resources, and they're kind of the ultimate governor about the rules around accessing and funding retirement plans. So we use the IRS website very frequently, and it's a great resource on how to access and how to think about retirement, especially retirement plans and how you tap those. And finally, the AARP has a host of resources on everything from Medicare plans to articles on aging and finance. So it's a great resource, and you could get lost on their website looking at different articles on aging and finance. So to conclude, while I don't have the exact dollar figure you'll need for your retirement, it is possible to get a handle on what you will need to have a successful retirement. And doing some advanced planning can help you identify shortfalls in your plan while you still have time to fix the shortfall. And I'm guessing through this presentation, we probably raised a few questions. So I'm going to turn it back to Dale to give you instructions on how to send in your questions now.
Thanks, Tim. We did have one or two that came in during the presentation. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, use the Q&A button on your panel. If we don't have time to answer it on air here, we'll make sure we get an answer. I also wanted to reiterate, we'll be sending each of you an information piece that we put together called 11 Key Questions for a Secure Retirement. And along with that piece, we're going to send you a link to a really short survey. This is something new that we're trying as a way to get some feedback. It's designed to be super short, just 5 simple questions, and it shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes to complete. So if you could help us out and let us know what you think, we would greatly appreciate it. So we have just a couple minutes for questions, which we will take. One question that came in is with respect to the 4% rule. And somebody wanted to know, they'd heard about that. What is it, and is this something that we should be kind of using as a rule of thumb?
Yeah, I mentioned that there are a lot of rules of thumb around retirement, and the 4% rule comes from a study done by Bill Bengen back in, I think it was 1994. And what he was trying to solve for was, what is the maximum amount that you can begin withdrawing from a portfolio over a 30-year time period that you would be assured of not running out of money? And to answer that question, what he did is he went back to market data going back to 1926 and said, okay, let's try 3%, let's try 4%, let's try 5%. Given different market scenarios, what's the maximum percentage that we could have withdrawn given historical market returns and still had money left at the end of 30 years? It's a useful starting point. But obviously there are a lot of generalizations in this rule of thumb. You know, for instance, one thing that we find is that we work with a lot of clients that may retire at age 65, but they don't start taking their Social Security until age 70. So during those years when they've retired but haven't taken their Social Security, they may need to take more than the 4% from their retirement portfolio. And that's okay, because we know that at some point when they do start taking Social Security, they're going to be taking less. So it's a rule of thumb, it's a good starting point, and it's a good point for discussion. But most people's specific situation is more complex than that.
Great. Well, it's 12:30. We have another question, but I think we can answer that offline. We appreciate everyone coming. And again, look for next month's webinar on tax planning. If you want to talk further, feel free to use the Q&A button for a few minutes, or you could just reach out to any of us at Steward Advisors. Thank you very much.